Well, the underwear bomber case is important because it's the most, in my opinion, it's the most clear evidence of a false flag event by the U.S. government. I think if you actually take the time to look into the evidence, the official version is not backed up by anything other than statements by members of the government. There is actually a great deal of evidence that backs up what I'm saying. So it's important in that sense that it's a very clear picture that the U.S. government stages terrorist attacks to forward their agenda, whatever that may be at that time. Not only that, but if you look at how the government's treated this case, you can see all the tools they use when they use the false flag attack, which is, you know, denying evidence and telling the media to not report certain things, blasting in the media all the unimportant things, propaganda issues that support their story, you know, the government forwarded story, not the real story. And it just gives you a real window how they handle these things. And if you look at the picture of this, how they handle things, and you see things happen in the future, you know, you can take their playbook, if you will, and apply it to the ones in the future, you know, and tell what's a false flag event or not. There had been no terrorist attacks on flights in the U.S. since 2001, so people were kind of getting, you know, weary of the war on terror, thinking, hey, you know, why are we spending all this money on the war on terror when there is no war on terror? You know, nothing's happening. We're not stopping anybody. Number two, we had, back when this happened in December 2009, we had certain parts of the Patriot Act that were up for renewal. They actually came up for renewal in early December 2009, just a couple weeks before this happened. And you can look it up on the internet. Hillary Clinton actually said, look, my constituents don't want to vote for the renewal. They don't think it's needed, and politically this will be damaging if, you know, my party votes for renewal of these parts of the Patriot Act. So they delayed the vote till, I believe, February 2010, and look what happens in the meantime. There was a bill that had already passed the House of Representatives, and the bill was to restrict the use of body scanning machines to secondary use only, meaning you would only have to go through the body scanning machines after you had set off the metal detector. And this had already passed the House. It was pending before the Senate for a vote in early 2010. And again, look what we have in the meantime, the underwear bomber attack. Incidentally, despite the fact that this bill had already passed the House and was pending before the Senate, the TSA and Department of Homeland Security continued to order many more body scanning machines for the airports. So, you know, read into that what you will. So, all of those reasons really, and basically they needed a crutch for the war on terror. Nothing was happening on the war on terror for many years. And now all you hear is, you know, every time the war on terror is brought up, or these enhanced procedures are brought up, TSA here and TSA there, and if you see something, say something, it all goes back to the underwear bomber. They all say, well, we need it because of the underwear bomber. It's a crutch. It's a crutch for any of these policies at all. So, you know, you can see how it's played into all of this.
But there are a few things we could do to make things better. First, we could deploy the scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy in the U.S. that would give us the ability to see what someone has concealed underneath their clothing. That has been vigorously opposed by the ACLU and privacy advocates. The House of Representatives voted to prevent us from using it. But I think now there's been a very vivid lesson in the value of that machinery.
In your current role as a consultant, do you have an interest in body scanners?
We consult with all kinds of firms, including firms that do manufacture body scanners.
You do have some interest in more sales of body scanners.
As well as a lot of other security measures. But I would point out that I've talked about this for probably the last 3 years.
You know, I don't really have any evidence on whether Chertoff was involved, but, you know, it's really suspicious to me that the former head of the Department of Homeland Security now works for body scanning companies, and there's so much money going around. You know, did somebody do a favor for Chertoff here? You know, that was paid back with some money? I don't know. I think it's entirely possible, but again, I don't have any evidence on this, so And I don't know, but yeah, it's highly suspicious that you have former head of Department of Homeland Security peddling body scanning machines and making who knows how much money off of them. Metal detectors were doing fine before the underwear bomber incident, and they were not the reason he got on the flight, obviously. So it's an unreasonable search, in my opinion, because all the body scanning machines are not necessary. They make you show a naked picture of yourself to unknown people, and they might cause you cancer. We don't know. But if you don't do that, you have to opt out, and therefore you have someone feeling you up, looking down your pants, and grabbing you between the legs. That's an unreasonable search, so it's definitely a violation of the Fourth Amendment. When I talk to people about this, the main response I get is, well, whatever it takes to make me feel safe, and that's a pretty discouraging response to me, in my opinion, because Americans will just voluntarily give up constitutional rights based on a lie. It's ridiculous and depressing.
Coming up, are you willing to give up a lot of your privacy when you go through security at the airport? How about a revealing full body scan? Would that be okay with you?
It does seem to me that we're becoming a police state, that's for sure. There just seems to be getting more and more and more security, you know, based on whatever the government says. You know, they make a statement, so therefore we need this, or they stage this event, so therefore we need this. And, you know, at what point do we not need security? At what point was the security not okay back on 9/11? No matter what you think about the 9/11 events, even if you don't think they were another false flag attack, they could have been prevented entirely. We knew all about them. We knew about the attackers flying in flight schools before this happened, and it could have been prevented. We didn't need new measures from that either. But you know, you see where this goes. The government uses these terrorist attacks not only to take away our rights, but to justify wars that they're definitely using for other purposes, you know, to steal oil, to topple regimes, to steal gold, whatever reasons you believe, to stop competing currencies backed by gold, whatever reasons you think. They're definitely not to liberate people. You know, if they were, why aren't we liberating Mexico? You know, they have all kinds of crazy things going on there now. Why aren't we liberating North Korea? You know, why is it restricted to these countries in the Middle East that have oil? And now we have, if you see something, say something, which incidentally I did, but you can see where it got me. You know, and talk about these body scanning machines going into bus terminals, train stations, malls, and wherever else. So you can see how they use this. My understanding of the NDAA, and what it does is it allows the U.S. government to detain anyone they want indefinitely if it declares that such person is a terrorist. Now, what's the definition of a terrorist is left solely at the discretion of the President of the United States. So if President Obama declares you a terrorist, the government can arrest you and hold you indefinitely without a trial. They don't even need to tell anyone they're holding you or where. You'll just disappear. That's what the NDAA allows. It's totally out of the playbook of the USSR or Nazi Germany, where the government can just come in and say, hey, you're going to disappear, sorry, and you're gone. And no one knows what happened to you. That's what it allows the government to do. Now, who is a terrorist exactly? Am I a terrorist? Am I a terrorist because I speak out against the government and I've informed the public of a false flag event? I don't know. Am I a terrorist because I was going to testify on the behalf of Abdul Muttalib? I don't know. What's interesting, too, is you don't actually have to be a terrorist. The law actually says that you can just be someone that's adding aid of some sort to a terrorist. So, again, I go back to the question, am I a terrorist for being willing to testify on the behalf of Abdul Muttalib under the NDAA? Seems likely that maybe I am. Am I aiding a terrorist by telling the government that they're staging false flag events, and therefore, you know, these terrorist groups have a defense to some of these terrorism trials? Maybe I am. Maybe I can be locked up indefinitely. And this is a gross violation of our constitutional rights. It doesn't get any more clear, you know, that you're entitled to due process under the law. You're entitled to a speedy trial. And this doesn't even allow you a speedy trial. It doesn't allow you any trial at all. And they're not even required to tell your family if they've taken you or anything. It's a gross violation of law. It's totally unconstitutional. It's all about power. And what's telling is that I believe 93 out of 100 senators voted for this law, something like that, like 93%. And I have to ask, so what incident could unite them so much that they would pass this clearly unconstitutional law? And to me, the answer is obvious. The answer is that they passed this law not to deal with crazy Islamic Muslim terrorists, but to be able to label anyone in the United States a terrorist for to deal with them and just take them off the streets during the coming global unrest that will happen here in the U.S., which I think is inevitable and will happen here very soon. I expect a total economic collapse in the U.S. very shortly, and then we're going to have all kinds of chaos here, and the government passed this law not to deal with the terrorists, but to arrest U.S. citizens and take them off without having to do a trial or give any justification. I think that's why you saw 93 senators out of 100 voting for it. I was previously going to sue the government over the underwear bomber attack for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and I've recently decided not to, and actually the statute of limitations expired on Christmas Day 2011, so even if I wanted to change my mind now, I couldn't. But I wanted to give the reasons why I've decided not to sue, and there are basically three reasons. One, in late 2011, the government came out with a bipartisan report called Report on Fiscal Responsibility or something like that. But anyway, what this was is a bipartisan panel appointed by Obama to study the future of the economy. And every member on the panel indicated that the U.S. government would collapse economically in no longer than 24 months. And this was written in late 2011, so that puts us in late 2013. Sometimes lawsuits can take several years, and this would be one that could possibly take several years. And I've decided it would be better off to take the time we have left, which is now maybe a year and a half, and instead of me spending a great deal of amount of time in this case, but to not put it into that, but to put it into making more money and preparing and saving as much money as I can to leave the country, as Lori and I plan to leave the country by late 2013, probably, by the end of 2013. So that's one of the reasons. Number two was the NDAA, and not due to intimidation. I'm not really concerned about the government locking me up, but my thinking was more along the lines of that the citizens of the United States didn't even care that this NDAA went through. There should be protests all over the streets. You know, the government's allowed to lock you up indefinitely without a trial. It seems like no one even cares about this. You know, they care more about, you know, whatever, any topic. You know, losing union benefits in Wisconsin, for example. You see picketing at the governor's mansion in Wisconsin. I mean, literally every person in the U.S. should be out picketing or doing whatever in the streets over this NDAA. There's almost nothing. So to me, that was a sign that, do people of the U.S. really care if I would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the underwear bomber case was a false flag event? And the answer to me was clearly no. So those two things, as well as number three, which was that every time I went to work on this case, I found that I had to put a great deal more time into it than I thought, and that this case would take probably, if not hundreds of hours of my time, thousands of hours of my time, and I'm already very busy as it is. And I decided that, you know, with myself leaving the country at the end of next year, that I wasn't going to commit that kind of time into something that people don't really care about. So those are the reasons that I decided to not file the case, not due to intimidation or being paid off or anything like that. Yeah, Abdul Muttalab hasn't been sentenced yet. He's actually being sentenced 2 days from now, February the 16th, and any passenger on the flight is allowed to make a victim impact statement telling how this matter has affected their life or lives, and I'll be giving a victim impact statement. Unfortunately, Judge Edmonds has limited each passenger to only 5 minutes, so it'll be pretty limited. But I will be appearing Thursday and giving a victim impact statement. Obviously, I'm going to talk about what I have been all along, which is that I think the media has been lying about this case. You know, what we're being shown in court isn't really what happened, and that this was a government setup with an intentionally defective bomb. Now, I have to be really careful how I word things because I'm still a practicing attorney and I actually practice in the same court on a weekly basis, so I have to kind of restrict what I say to not get me in trouble with the state bar, but it'll be something along those lines. I'll have a pre-prepared statement. What made me come forward is that, one, I was very irritated that I almost lost my life on Christmas Day 2009, and you know, I'm very irritated over who is behind it, U.S. government, for sure, my own government, and I thought it was important that I come out and talk about it. You know, I'm used to talking in public. I do it on a daily basis at court. I have no problem with people talking badly about me. They do that all the time. You know, the other side or whoever, I have no problem getting yelled at. So really, I have a pretty thick skin for people talking badly about me. And as far as intimidation, I don't really care. What is the government going to do to me? It's not like they can cost me, you know, my employment. It's not like they're more credible than I am. It's not like they have more evidence behind them in this case than I do. And, you know, frankly, I'm just not intimidated by them at all. I think it's important that we all come out and talk about it. If you do nothing and you're intimidated by the government and don't come out and speak about it, you're just going to encourage more of this behavior. I think at the very least I've awakened a lot of people that normally wouldn't think like this, and I've convinced them that my version of the events are in fact correct. So I encourage you to do the same that I have, and eventually enough people will be convinced that the U.S. government is entirely corrupt and should be replaced. You know, the next question is, how do we fix the problems here? And I think people that think we're going to do this by voting out people and putting in, you know, people that will honor the Constitution and protect the rights of U.S. citizens, I think you're being naive. I think this is an entirely corrupt organization running things in the U.S. now, controlled by greed and money. They're not going to willingly give that up voluntarily. So I don't think things are going to change here by voting, and I think you can see that with the primaries going on now, and Ron Paul, the guy, you know, even though a lot of people are holding out their hopes for him, he has no chance. The media is against him, and you know, there's been allegations of vote rigging in a couple of states already, and it's just not going to happen. He's not going to be elected, and that's the sort of thing you'll see in with any candidate that might try and change things. That's what you're going to get, and it's just not going to happen. So I don't think things are going to change. They're going to get worse and worse and worse until there's total economic and political collapse here, and this becomes a total dictatorship? I don't know. You're going to see a government collapse very soon, though, and it's only going to change due to the people rising up. And I'm not talking about just blogs or watching shows or whatever, but physically going out and doing things and changing things. Not through elections. Since this happened, you know, a couple years ago, Christmas 2009, I've really changed my belief in regards to anything that has to do with the government. I was just a normal citizen before that. I didn't really have any beliefs that the government was as extreme it is and so willing to violate constitutional rights and stage false flag attacks and put out propaganda. I was just a regular person, and since this happened, and you can see it from some of my early videos or writings that I made, that I really questioned what happened here. I didn't come to conclusions right away, but it's my theory on what has happened has been developed over couple of years looking at all the evidence. So where I'm at this point is that I don't believe the government in anything. I don't trust them at all. I think they have some sort of an alternative agenda, which has to do with taking rights away of Americans. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's definitely there. And it's not for the reasons they're saying, to protect you from terrorism, but it's due to alternative reasons. You know, maybe the coming economic collapse, or maybe to mask that the government wants to take over the world. I don't know, but you can see pretty obvious acceleration of the loss of our constitutional rights. And you know, I've really looked into these things a lot more since Christmas Day 2009, and again, I don't trust the government at all, and I don't think they're working in the best interests of the U.S. citizens.